Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Global Patties. Hey, everybody, each week we get to talk about how much we appreciate our sponsors' support, and we'd rather get right to talking about beekeeping. However, our great sponsors are critical to help making all of this happen. From the transcripts to hosting fees to software to hardware to microphones to recorders, our sponsors enable each episode. So with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. We also want to thank 2 Million Blossoms, a sponsor of the episode, also available from the 2millionblossoms.com website or from wherever you download and stream your shows. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're really happy you're here. Hey Kim, we're chugging away into 2022. Have you gotten out to see your bees yet this year?
It's 19 degrees out there yet today, Jeff. I'm going to wait a little bit. I was out earlier in December when it was in the 60s.
I was going to say it was 60 last week, wasn't it?
Yeah. But today, winter decided to come and stay, and we don't have any snow, but we got the cold, so I'm just going to look at them from here.
If you had a sensor like our guest who's coming up from Broodminder, Rich Morris, if you had one of his sensors in your hive, you'd be able to tell how well your hives are doing.
Yeah, I know you got one, and I'm after this week, I just think I'm going to have to look into getting something like that.
Yeah, you bet. So, you've been doing a lot of reading over the holiday break.
Yes, I have. And Jeff, I got to tell you, I got a book here that starting right about now, beginners classes are coming up. Mm-hmm. And if you're a beginner beekeeper or you've been at it for a while, or if you're teaching a beginner's class, I think I found a book that can really help. And it's called The Illustrated Glossary of Honeybee and Beekeeping Terminology. It's by a lady named Sue Remeni, and she's from the UK. So some of this book is, kind of slanted towards UK terminology, but boy, hardly any, and you won't even notice because she did such a good job of bringing it all together. You can get it anywhere, Amazon or from the publisher. It costs $20. And again, the Illustrated Glossary of Honeybee and Beekeeping Terminology, that's how you're going to find it on Amazon. And I got a review written here for you, Jeff, and I'll just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, it's about time somebody produced this book. All the author is from the UK, and some of the terms here will definitely be of UK origin. Plus, all of the terms used in most of the rest of the world are here also. So you're not going to get buried in crown boards. You might not find intercover, but you're going to find almost everything else. There are very few exceptions where only the UK term is used. And for instance, I mentioned intercover and crown board, but boy, I can count on one hand how many times you're going to run into that problem. It's really an impressive piece of work. There's 8 chapters covering anatomy, biology, development, pests and diseases, castes, species, the actual practice of beekeeping, both activity and equipment, flowers and pollen, honey and wax, and common and not so common abbreviations you will encounter in your pursuit of honeybee knowledge. Many, many photos are included to further explain a term, and often a reference to another term included in the book is shown to further explain the subject at hand. And of course, all topics are listed alphabetically, so they're easy to find, and all photos or drawings are referenced by both chapter and figure within the chapter. All told, there's more than 800 terms, Jeff. Did you know there were even that many terms in beekeeping?
I don't even know if I have that big of a vocabulary.
All told, there's more than 800 terms and definitions that they're brief, but they provide enough info to answer any question I could come up with. A glossary is also provided within each section, and a reading list for each section is provided so, if needed, you have more to explore. And at the end, there's an alphabetical index with page numbers to use to quickly find what's needed. This book is perfect for a beginner, a teacher, or someone looking to better explain a technique or management tool. In fact, if I were teaching a beginner's class this spring, I'd strongly recommend it to all of my students. It's a good book, and Jeff, I think you should go out and get one.
I think, my bee library has expanded a whole nother row in the last 3 years. Jeez, I wonder if there's...
Row?
Yeah.
Row? I got shelves, Jeff.
You've got a few years on me.
So this is a good one, and you can get it at Amazon or probably any place that sells beekeeping books. An illustrated glossary of honeybee and beekeeping terminology. Go out and get one today.
Thanks a lot, Kim. Coming up, we have the return of Rich Morris of Broodminder, the head drone of Broodminder, and he's going to talk to us about the latest updates there in Wisconsin.
And what's new. He's got some good new stuff since we talked to him last. And I can see where people are going to start using this as a tool for other beekeeping subjects other than just what's going on in your backyard.
That's going to be good. So, but first, let's hear a quick word from our friends at Strong Microbials.
Hello, beekeepers. Your honeybees face a lot of challenges out there. Unbalanced food sources from monoculture crops, holding yards, drought, food shortages, antibiotics, pesticides, and pathogens like chalk brood. To overcome these challenges, your bees need the multiple bacteria that are in all nectars, pollens, and the environment. These bacteria aid honeybees' digestion and improve your honeybees' response and resilience to pesticides. Now you can help improve your honey colony health with a quick, easy, and safe-to-use product. Strong Microbials Super DFM Honeybee uses naturally occurring bacteria to restore the healthy gut biome of your honeybees. Check them out today at www.strongmicrobials.com.
Hey, and while you're at the Strong Microbial site, make sure you click on and subscribe to The Hive, their regular newsletter full of product information and interesting bee facts. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Sitting across the virtual Zoom table right now is Rich Morris, head drone of Broodminder. Hey, Rich, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here.
Well, I'm delighted to be back. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Rich. How's life in Wisconsin?
Life has turned cold, finally. The bees were out flying not that long ago, but now I think they've huddled up and we're just, waiting for spring to come.
Oh, good. So can you, for the folks who aren't familiar with you and Broodminder, can you just give us a little background on Broodminder and yourself and then Broodminder?
Okay. Well, I've been keeping bees about 15 years and had an opportunity around 6 years ago to reinvent myself yet again and decided that, hey, I'm a beekeeper and I'm an electrical product designer. So, why don't we combine those? And originally, the thought was just to know, exactly when my bees died during the winter, because it seemed like 7 out of 8 years they did. And so if I got that one data point, that would be enough. But, starting from there and meeting people across the internet and everything, we got Broodminder going.
Well, Rich, one of the things that it's been a while since we've talked to you, and I know that Broodminder has moved forward since we talked to you last. Can you update us on what you brought in the last year and where you were and where you are now, and I guess where you're headed?
Okay. Well, so we've been busy doing a lot of Generation 2 products, really. And by that, I mean, we started and we've got, temperature and humidity sensors that go inside the hive. We got a couple of different scales that go under the hives to weigh them. And then we have all this network which connects back to the internet to bring this data forward. And one of the things we learned over the years was, our first ideas, like any good engineer or designer, you say, oh, if I could do that again. So now, after these 6 years, we've really gone to generation 2, or in some cases 3, on all these products. With regards to our scales and the connectivity, the pain points that people have told us over the years, like collecting data, can be sort of tedious if you have 20 of these things. So we invented this thing we call a SubHub that makes that process much easier. We've redone our Wi-Fi and cellular products that bring it back to mybroodminder.com, because things like inner ICs become unavailable, and we have to redesign it for 4G instead of 3G and those sorts of things. So we've been busy doing some of that things, but also the more exciting part are, now that we're getting this data in, because we've shipped about 22,000 sensors globally. We're getting this data in, we're moving on to the data analysis part of it and really beginning to understand the signatures of these behaviors that we see the bees make.
The sensors, I think the sensors are really cool. Let's go back and talk about those real quick, just kind of complete the picture there, because the sensors, you mentioned the temperature and the hive, the humidity and the scales. So those are individual sensors that a beekeeper can either use their phone, Android or iPhone or whatever, to collect the information, or you have different devices now that can collect that information and automatically populate it to the internet, correct?
Yeah. So, what we found out was not a surprise, but, apiaries are everywhere. And everybody has a little different setup, and some have it in their backyard where they've got Wi-Fi. Some have it out in the middle of Nebraska where there's no cellular connections and all these different things. So one of our big goals has always been to make these as easy to use as possible. I like to say that, my mother can use these things. And as a result, we've spent a lot of time and effort, on, like you said, we have an iPhone and Android app. We have cellular connections that bring this data live back to the internet. We have all these different methods to get the data, but the real question is, what's the data? Yeah. And so that data that we're talking about is internal hive temperature, and with that, we see that once you've kept bees a little while, you know that they thermoregulate. So that's a really big and super cool thing that they do. As a superorganism, when they're raising brood, they hold the temperature to right around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And they only do that when they have brood. So if they don't have brood, we see the temperature inside bouncing up and down. If they do have brood, then we see this rock solid 95 degrees. So that's where we started. But then along the way, we find out that, okay, when they swarm, there's this 4-degree bump that has a very particular shape to it in it. So we can also watch for that. So our sensors are watching for those temperature bumps every once in a while. And then it generates this signal that we send out, and it ends up coming to your cell phone. So it can say, hey, you might want to go out to your apiary and collect the bees. And that's been pretty exciting because it's really working remarkably well, and we're now going through that data.
I can attest for that. Okay. that alert and the email and the notification that darn it, they've swarmed again. It's surprisingly effective.
Well, and what we found is that they swarm a lot more than I thought. Maybe Kim knows this because he's the beekeeper forever. But it seems like every hive, and whether they're successful swarms or not, too, they have a lot of failed swarms where they'll disappear and then find out they don't have the queen, or we don't know what's going on yet, but we can see, these events happen. So that's really been fascinating.
Rich, I just want to take a half step back and let you describe the sensors that you're talking about and how many of them you have in a hive.
Okay, yeah, I get ahead of myself. So the temperature, we have temperature sensors and we have sensors that are temperature and humidity. We have both just because we can make the temperature only sensors cheaper. And they're about a quarter-inch thick and an inch or so wide, and they're mounted in a strip so that you want to get the temperature we put it right on top of like frame number 5, if you got a 10 frame hive, in the middle of the brood box on top of the frames. If you got a couple of brood boxes, then we put one on each brood box. So that's watching the lower and upper brood box temperatures. And then underneath the hive, we put a scale. And that scale is mostly, it's looking at the hive weight, certainly. So you see swarms and you see nectar coming in. And it's mostly telling you what the trees are doing, or the blobs.
Rich, I got 2 questions for that. You said it's a quarter of an inch high and it sits on top of the top bar of your brood nest. And if there's a box above it, I'm wondering about bee space being a challenge. And then Jeff, since you've got one of these too, do you see a propolis being an issue on these?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, yeah, for both questions. There's a little bit of a burr comb that the bees will mess around with it, and a little bit of propolis, but it's not a issue. It doesn't cement it doesn't connect the top, the bottom box to the top box. That separates real nicely for the most part. I've not had an issue.
We found that we use a real slippery plastic, and bees love things that are rough, and they really propolize that stuff. And it was surprising. And anyone out there should try this. And if you do want to put something in the hive, put packing tape over it. And they pretty much leave it alone. It's like, okay. I don't like that.
Okay. So, well, I was just curious about it since I haven't seen one. So that's good then. It doesn't interfere with life in the hive.
Well, that's one of the design goals that you try to do. You don't want to screw things up.
Better Bee is pleased to sponsor today's episode of Beekeeping Today podcast. For over 40 years, Better Bee has supplied beekeepers across the country with the tools, equipment, and knowledge needed to succeed. Because many Better Bee employees are beekeepers themselves, they understand your needs and challenges and are better prepared to answer your beekeeping questions. From their colorful catalog to their support of beekeeper educational activities, including this podcast, Better Bee truly lives up to their tagline of beekeepers serving beekeepers. See for yourself at betterbee.com.
I'm really impressed with your webpage. I encourage people to go take a look at it. It's got a lot of information in it. I was looking at the scale you have. You have 2 kinds of scales in there. One of them just sits on the front of the hive, and the other one measures the whole hive. And the scale that sits on the front of the hive is weighing the front half of the hive?
Yeah. So when we started this, we did interviews with people and said, okay, you have a choice. Would you like a scale that's maybe less accurate? So there's a difference between precision and accuracy. Precision being, how small of a change you can see. Accuracy being, that it might be off a pound, but you're still seeing these small changes. And it being cheaper, well, like most beekeepers, cheaper was good. So it does a couple of things for us. It's a smaller device, so it's easier to ship. And, these things do break. We're putting them outside and we're treating them rough. So shipping it back and forth, if we do need to work on it, is cheaper. If you have a full hive scale, they're big and heavy. So, that's harder to deal with. And so for most people, you're wondering, okay, is the nectar flow on? Is it going up? Or is it going down? And if the hive weight is 150 pounds or 145 pounds, it doesn't really matter. you care if it went up 2 pounds today or down 2 pounds. So that's the reason for going for the half hive scale. And we just doubled the results, and that's good enough. But then we found that, especially for researchers, they really wanted accurate weight. So we came up with the full hive scale. And in fact, what we did this year, because again, many beekeepers are, let's say, cost conscious. We started offering it as a kit because we realized that, okay, why should we ship something that's the size of a beehive and made out of 2x4s when, you can do that yourself. So, we sell the kits pre-calibrated, or we sell, we decided the do-it-yourself people, save them some money. And so, we got various flavors of all these things, really to just try to make everybody happy, which is all we're trying to do.
World peace.
World peace.
Starts with a hive scale. Well, I will tell you that I've worked with all three of the different scales. I actually have the scale under the back of the hive, but I went to the extent of doing the pivot point with the angle iron and everything else. And I really, no matter what the scale is, and I actually like the green one, the W2 scale. I really kind of enjoy that one because it has an integrated slatted rack, which I use in all my hives. But the scales are really effective, and I've always wanted a scale under my hive, and the Broodminder scale, I was like, yeah, this works. This is nice because it may not, I don't really care whether it's actually, does the hive actually weigh 105 pounds? But if I can see an increase to 110, then that's significant. I mean, I know there's a change. There's a change that's happening. And you mentioned swarming before. It's really interesting just from a biology standpoint, seeing the hive weight drop after a swarm. Yeah. And it's like, what? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. So it's kind of fun as a beekeeper saying, putting all this together in one, sitting at the office and looking at the computer screen and being able to see everything that's going on in your bee yard is
fantastic. And what we really love is, sort of extending the work that Wayne Silas started with the NASA honeybee net. When we start collecting this from all over the country, all over the globe, then, we all know that, weight is nectar, nectar is blooming, blooming is climate. And, year over year, that's really, telling us some pretty cool information, as we pile up all this data. So, we're having fun. It's terribly interesting. We're meeting tons of great people and great researchers. So, that's been really valuable for us. And I mean, personally, this is the first year I put in a 2-pound package in late May, and they went to 350 pounds.
Wow.
Tell you what, watching that on the scale really makes you feel good.
That is fun.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things I want to talk to you about, and Kim probably does too. But you touched on it just a little bit. Now let's keep talking about products before we get on to the BeeCounted.
Okay.
So what do you have on tap for 2022? What can we what should we start saving for this year from a sensor standpoint?
So two cool things were really working well. 3 cool things. I'll start with the first one. We just implemented a third-party device. So one of the things I'll make a pitch for is we started a Facebook group that we're trying to not make Broodminder per se. It's really hive monitoring. So if you search hive monitoring on Facebook, you'll come up with this group, and a bunch of great people are posting there. Etienne Tardif up in Yukon and posts a lot about how he's keeping his bees, and it's a really good conversation point that's going on with all that. So the other thing is that on that site we got a request for LoRa connected devices. So LoRa is long range wireless.
Mm.
And it's popular in Europe and several places, but the wireless connection will go over a mile. And so this company, Yolink, makes them. And so we integrated their products into our ecosystem. So that gives people, and we're really interested in integrating pretty much anybody's products into our ecosystem, competitors or whoever. So that's a push for this year. Another one, which is going to be fun, we've been working a couple of years with Herb Almond, who's up in Maine. And he started, I guess about 3 or 4 years ago with a BDAR. So he was using radar as an entrance monitor. And so we're implementing that and working with Herb to implement his system, which he called Janus. And it's doing two things. One, it has a radar that's looking at the bees coming and going. And then it also has an acoustic pickup, which is listening to the hive. And we'll be coming out with a lot more information about this as we get close, but we're going to integrate that into our system and as a bee activity monitor. So that's pretty exciting. And then the third thing is just last Monday, we got notified that we received a National Science Foundation grant to pursue our mite counter.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Last time I was on here, I said, yeah, we're working on a mite counter. Look for us next summer. Well, we found out it was a lot harder than we thought. But we're working with Purdue University on this. We'd done some preliminary things. And so this year, Steve Cantley is helping us. And we're going to be pushing for that.
Wow.
So we got a lot on the plate. It's all really exciting.
Rich, one of the things that when I was looking at your webpage, I noticed something called the SubHub. And as near as I can understand what that is, it's sort of, if you've got 20 colonies in a bee yard and you've got sensors in each one of those colonies, it gathers all of that data into one location and then downloads it all at once to some place that you direct it to?
Yeah, so the idea we had was that, if you've got 20 or 30 hives in your apiary, and the temperature is telling you individual hive information. The scale is sort of telling you about what's blooming and those sorts of things. But, the hive health varies so much from hive to hive that you end up with 20 temperature devices. And if you're gathering those one at a time, it's tedious. So the SubHub just sits there, and once every 10 minutes, it wakes up, listens to all 20 devices. And then when you show up at your apiary, you connect to this one device, and it will transfer about 50 years worth of data in 2 minutes.
Wow.
So it's a lot faster than we need. But, when you show up 2 weeks and you've got, 20 or 30 hives, I think Jeff can tell you, if you're doing it manually, it can get sort of tedious.
Especially in the rain.
Especially in the rain, yeah. So the SubHub we invented just to make it easier.
I guess it would. That makes a lot of sense if you've got a lot of colonies and you are far enough away that you don't have good electronic transmission.
Right.
I can just show up and...
You pull up in your truck.
Yep.
You connect to the SubHub, and in 2 minutes, you basically have the status of all your hives.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I have to give credit. Rich Hogel did all the firmware for that. We have a number of people on our team, and they're all pretty much working for nothing. So we are all beekeepers, and we're all sort of looking at this and saying, well, if we do this together, we will love this stuff. And if we love it, then we know that there are people out there like, Jeff and others who really are using it. It's not just a frill.
I got to bet that the people that have been using this, Jeff included, but even bigger beekeepers who have numerous hives, have you been able to work with them or touch base with them in the big picture? Is this saving me labor? Is this saving me money? Is this saving me time? And is it making me a better beekeeper?
And that is the real question, because, frankly, if it's not doing that, like, we're wasting our time. So finding out what that return on investment has been, one of the missions, and it's taken a while because this is all new. Beekeeping is pretty slow to adopt it. So what we do find is that, we have a number of people now, and it's nice because, when people come and get things and then say, well, I need more of them, they're actually using it. And people like Teresa Martin in Kentucky, her hives are all remote, and she's going out and checking and using that to, see if they did swarm while she was gone. And we have a number of people who are enjoying it. And, we need to convert that, though, to, okay, is it saving us dollars? So, we're not quite there yet, but I don't know. Give me your opinion, Jeff. You're sort of a long-time user.
Well, I'm no longer keeping close of any of my expenses or time spent, but it does help you realize, hey, I'm always been one that's the more you disturb the bees, the more problems you cause for them. So if I can look at a graph, and after a while I've learned how mostly at least have a basic understanding how to read the graph of the temperature and the weight gain and compare it to outside temperature and everything else, to understand, well, this hive is really healthy. The queen is firing all cylinders. There's, both brood chambers are right there, unheated, and they're gaining weight. I don't need to open them. I don't need to risk damaging that queen who's working so well. Whereas, so that saves time. That does save time. And then this time of year, when you start seeing the outside temperature and both brood box temperature is about the same and following the same fluctuation, you say, well, I don't need to wait till the end of March or March to find out that I have a dead colony there. I have that dead colony, and I can plan on, splits or nukes or packages. And so that does help save some time ultimately.
The other thing that we have going on, what we've discovered since we've started all this is, this is a huge thing we're trying to accomplish. And I say that because, okay, sticking a temperature sensor in a hive is no big deal. Okay, we can do that. But then there's getting data, to the network and all those sorts of things. But the final crucial stage is that, data to beekeeper connection. And that's where we still are with the early adopters, people like Jeff who can, sort of understand the graphs and all those sorts of things. But Lorenzo Pons and his group in France, Melosfera, their focus, because you can't do everything, we can't do everything, but their focus is that beekeeper connection. So they want to speak beekeeping. They don't want it to speak engineering or science. They want to say, and this is where they're investing a lot of energy the last 3 years, I guess. They take our data and then take the environmental data from the network or from local weather stations. And they are generating alerts to say, hey, there's a snowstorm coming. You should blah, blah, blah. Your hive's, strength of your hive is here, and compare it to the other ones in the area. And to actually take the data and utilize it, which is another, huge project, because you have to understand, you have to get the data, but you also have to have it documented in a way that you can say, okay, this means that. And it's a long process, and, we're just working through it.
I would guess that your BeeCounted data, the website where you collect all of that stuff, is going a long way in, the last 3 years when this happened outside, this happened inside, and now it's happening outside, I can probably predict that I'm going to have a problem inside my hive in a week or so.
And that's exactly what we were talking about this morning. So Anya McGurk in North Carolina has joined their team. She's a very recently retired data scientist / beekeeper. And she is super enthusiastic, and she worked for SAS for a lot of years. And we're taking previous 2 summers data, and we have these swarm triggers that we've been getting. And now she's going through that, and we're refining those algorithms. And, exactly to what you're saying there, Kim, is that we've got this, increasingly large pile of data, which, is really vital. And every year it's just, we're trying to improve and, glean more beekeeping information out of it.
Let's real briefly though. Let's just jump back. The BeeCounted is an option that a beekeeper who's using the Broodminder product can opt into, share their information anonymously to a larger group for data scientists, for other beekeepers to view online.
Right. So anyone out there right now can go to beecounted.org, and there's a bunch of information there, but there's also the map of live data from the beekeepers. So that is you don't need passwords or anything. That's our public information site. And you can go, and if you know that someone has a hive up in Olympia, Washington, you can click in that area. We just do it by zip code so that, people aren't going to come and get your honey and that sort of stuff. But, we have a lot of people, and we have some people who actually share their data with their mentors that way. Within our normal mybroodminder.com, you can share data between people. And, we are really trying to, push the social aspect of this and, all work together like our bees to do incredible things. It
is really fun, and I will have I'll make sure the links are in the show notes for anybody who wants to go take a look at what we're talking about in BeeCounted, and even if I can get a direct link to my apiary, you can see how many dead hives I have this winter.
Yeah, and basically everybody can share their own apiary. Yeah. With the 4-letter code that we have.
Yeah.
So it's a random code. They don't know who it is, but, so it's private but public.
And you can click on an individual hive. It's still randomized. You don't know which hive that is, but you can click on an individual hive, and then you can look at the what we're talking about, graphs for that individual hive over a period of time. And it's really enlightening. I encourage people to explore that.
One of the things that's sort of fun is to, look at them brood up in the spring. So you see, down in the San Francisco area, they start brooding up strong in January. And, by the time you get into Canada, it's, March or so. And you see the temperature, just come, and it rails up to 95 degrees and sits there until late in the fall. And then it ramps back down, of course, unless you lose your queen or, one of the other 10,000 things that happen to us all during the season.
Taking this another step, I could see using this data and this equipment. If I was a commercial beekeeper and I was hiring out my hives for pollination, I could go to a grower and say, here's my data. This is what my bees have been doing, and this is how big they are. Vice versa, a grower could say, I want to see your bee data. Show me, right. show me it, so it could work both ways, but it would work both ways for the benefit of both, I think.
Right. And indeed, that is sort of the model that people like Bee Hero are going after, is that, the pollination services is this huge agribusiness. We are going a slightly different way, that we're looking at bee health, and we're doing this on the backs right now of backyard beekeepers and, sideliners, because, they can afford to do it right now. And this is our proof of the principle of, what we're learning and how we recognize these signatures, and then move it forward into general ag as time goes on. But I guess we're more about bee health, and then several other groups are more about the pollination services. And like you said, Kim, exactly that, I want to know I have strong hives in there. How do I know that?
And then how can I prove it?
Yeah.
And
We want to see data.
I got a hard copy right here. Take a look. And you're developing this for a reason, but people are going to take that tool that you're developing, and I can see applications all over the place that how growers and beekeepers could use this for a variety of reasons. You're sitting on a gold mine, I think.
Well, I that'd be nice. But, if we make our little impact, we're happy already. I'll tell you that. If nothing else, the number of, really high quality people, beekeepers are pretty cool. I mean, it's, you go to these meetings, which I really miss this last year. All I went to was EAS. And I miss seeing, people like, Tim walking around with his iPhone filming everybody. But we'll get there. We'll be back and life's a journey, right?
The one last question I have, and then is in terms of the data, are you part of the BXML initiative, the standardization of the bee data?
The Bee Informed project, and
it has a couple different names.
Appellation.
Yeah,
we are. We're so. I guess a year or so ago, Jerry Bromanshank had his big meeting, and there's a lot of work going on. We are cooperating with all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of those projects, you just run out of time at some point.
All those volunteer projects is really what it is.
But like I said, we are very open to bringing in anyone's data.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that has just been awesome is our number one programmer, Amanda Stoltz, has done just a fabulous job, and her working with Lorenzo to redesign the app this year. So it's become a lot more intuitive, and you find out, one of the things we found out was that these things move between hives a lot. It's not surprising, but we didn't think about that. And so you have a hive that, perishes, or you do a split, or you do all these things. And so your devices are moving around all the time. And that's a database nightmare. But Amanda has done just a fabulous job on the app and on my Broodminder to work with all these. And I mean, there's literally $2 million worth of software that we've written to stitch all this together.
Wow.
It's been done mostly on the cheap because we're all beekeepers and we like doing it. But if we were charging, what we get paid for real work, it would be that much. So we're really happy with the team. Theo Hartman, I think you've talked with him before.
Mm-hmm.
He's our number one quality control. He runs 50 hives, fully instrumented. He tells us everything that isn't working right. It's great. And
that's what you need.
Mike Fuller, he does all our support. And, it's people like this that are making it possible to do this project because, frankly, it's not a one-person job. So just super happy with where we are. And life is good.
Well, it sounds like you got a good team going for you there.
It's really been incredible. Yeah, it's a super, super duper team.
Fantastic. Well, Rich, is anything else you'd like to mention that we haven't asked you about yet?
No, I think, we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. Really happy about that. As always, every hive counts. Got to get that in there somewhere.
You need to put that on a T-shirt. You need a green T-shirt that has the logo, the Broodminder logo, and every hive counts on the back.
Well, one of our guys is telling us we need to have those, so maybe we'll get them.
Well, Rich, thanks so much for being on the show. Look forward to getting caught up with you again, and I hope you have a great season.
I'll do my best. Take care, guys.
Well, you've convinced me, Rich. I'm going to have to chase this now.
Well, good. I'm happy about that. You'll be surprised.
Good.
It's wonderful.
Good. I look forward to it. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, I was really happy to have Rich on the show. And I like my Broodminder sensors. I would miss them if I didn't have them.
Well, I can see that I'm going to have to bite the bullet here and get them involved in at least a couple of my hives this summer. The one thing that I didn't get out, and I'm sorry I didn't get to ask him about it. He's got a device that can deal with capturing data from something like 2,000 hives, and it's just a bigger one of the things that we talked about. But it can listen to up to 80 hives, and then it can begin to gather that data so that a commercial beekeeper really can do this.
Yeah, I think that's what they call it, the SubHub. I think it can collect all that information. Didn't he talk about that?
No, the SubHub was a smaller device.
All right.
And this one is solar powered. You got an antenna that sits on top of your hive, so you don't have to change batteries all the time. And it's just one step more towards, if I'm a commercial beekeeper and I've got a lot of bees in California, I can start showing growers what I got.
Yeah, I enjoy the technology and what it can do for us. And this is definitely a product I would recommend to folks to invest in and look at, and check out the links. You can see what kind of data is collected. And
share this with people who you think might be able to use this kind of information, this kind of data. Send them over to Better Bee to get a starter kit. Yeah, and Better Bee is the North American distributor for the only one. Broodminder products. Yeah, good folks at Better Bee. All right, well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts wherever you download or stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for a new podcast know what you'd like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any web page. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com. We want to thank Strong Microbials for their support of the podcast. Check out their probiotic line at www.strongmicrobials.com. And we want to thank Better Bee for being our supporter. Check out their supplies, all of their great beekeeping supplies at www.betterbee.com. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on this show. Feel free to send us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else, Tim? I think that wraps it up. It was a good show. It sure was. Hey, thanks a lot, everybody.